Well, we got a great turnout here today. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to the Capitol, to the Robert D. Ray Conference Room. Maybe I ought to tell you why we named this the Robert D. Ray Conference Room. Bob Ray, as many of you know, was my predecessor as governor and very popular long-term governor. When he became governor, he used to have a press conference in this room every day. He finally cut it down to 2 a week, and now we have at least 1 a week. But for his birthday a few years ago, I came up with the idea: nobody will ever have as many conferences or press conferences here as Governor Ray. So why don't we name it after him? So we did. He was very pleased. We put up his portrait. So welcome to the Robert D. Ray Conference Room. And thank you all for joining us for this very special Friday afternoon press conference to discuss a very important announcement for the state of Iowa. We're here today with our partners at both the federal and local level to share details of a major flood reduction and water quality grant that we are receiving from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. I'm pleased to be joined today by Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds, our Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Bill Northey, HUD Regional Administrator Jennifer Tidwell, who came all the way from Kansas City to be here. I told her, good thing she works in Kansas City and not in Washington, D.C., because they're closing down the federal government due to the... We also have Mayor Roy Buell from Dubuque and Sean McMahon, Executive Director of the Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance. Earlier this week, I visited by telephone with U.S. HUD Secretary Julian Castro, and he informed me that Iowa was awarded a grant totaling nearly $97 million to accelerate flood reduction and water quality efforts in 9 key watersheds around the state. Through this new federal funding, the state of Iowa will continue collaborative efforts in both rural and urban areas to reduce flooding and improve water quality. I want to thank HUD for this investment and for a more resilient Iowa future. I appreciate Regional Administrator Tidwell making the extra effort to be here in Des Moines for the announcement. This significant investment in an effective local, state, and federal partnership will help build on our Iowa nutrient reduction strategy and our flood mitigation program. Over the years, we have addressed significant flooding in different parts of the state, going way back to when we lost our waterworks in Des Moines in 1993. I was governor then too. Just one example, I remember traveling to Dubuque in 2011 when a torrential rain caused a fast flood that did significant damage to a number of homes, including that of Senate President Pam Yocum. I actually visited her when she was in the cleanup phase along with a lot of her neighbors on that occasion. This grant will help mitigate those types of flooding risks and help improve water quality throughout our state. These federal dollars will also complement our recent proposal, our SAVE proposal that I outlined in the Condition of the State address to provide long-term state funding for both school infrastructure and water quality. Now I want to turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor to tell you more.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Governor Branstad. And I too want to say how exciting it is to be here for the announcement and the opportunity to discuss 2 really important issues in Iowa, and that's flood control as well as water quality. The effort, I think the governor kind of hit on it, is, demonstrates how important partnerships are. And this is a reflection, I think, of the continued commitment from local, state, federal, academic, and private sector leaders to really nurture a bright future for Iowa. This new grant provides communities a great opportunity to accelerate flood reduction and improve water quality efforts. From water infrastructure projects in Dubuque, Coralville, and Storm Lake to investments in our rural landscape. This grant will build on the great work that really has already been done and that they've been working on. Some of the highlights of the funding include $8.4 million for Dubuque Healthy Homes Project, $23.1 million for Dubuque infrastructure, $6.5 million for Storm Lake infrastructure, $1.8 million for Coralville infrastructure, and $31.5 million for investments in 9 targeted watersheds. So I want to thank state personnel who've worked for over a year to secure this grant from, and those agencies include Economic Development Authority, Homeland Security and Emergency Management, Department of Ag, and Department of Natural Resources. I also want to thank an impressive coalition of stakeholders that were really crucial to the success in this application, and those include local officials like Mayor Buell of Dubuque, who you're going to have the opportunity to hear from in just a moment, and officials from Storm Lake as well as Coralville, academic leaders at Iowa State, University of Northern Iowa, and Iowa, including Larry Weber, who we've been working with and talking to at the Iowa Flood Center. He's with us today, so we appreciate all that you've done to help us in the success of this grant. Agriculture and stewardship leaders like Secretary Northey and Sean McMahon. All Iowans should be proud of Iowa's nearly $97 million grant. It is the 4th largest award in the entire nation and underscores the soundness of our innovative flood reduction and water quality approach. And another key partner that I would like to welcome to the podium, who's been instrumental in helping us really have the type of water quality that we know we want here in Iowa, and that's our great Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Bill Norton. Bill?
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you all for being here. This is a day to celebrate, a great event with a lot of work to do that comes from this. We're excited to participate in these projects, both in the past and drawing the pieces up, but really look forward to the implementation and being a strong part of that. Incorporating water quality considerations into the flood protection is something that we've all been part of. This addresses very directly, and it's very important to be able to do that and talk about disaster resiliency and being able to handle disasters while improving water quality with structures that help in the long-term water quality effort. It's part of a creative approach that is demonstrated with this grant in finding new ways to improve water quality, find other ways of being able to support that effort. 4 of the 9 priority areas of the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy are within the areas that are the focus of this project. So it ties in very well with those. So part of these funds will be used to support installation of buffers, of wetlands, of bioreactors, terraces, and other good water quality practices. These practices will help housing, they will help infrastructure, agriculture, urban areas that are vulnerable to flooding, as well as could have an impact on water quality for those areas as well. So through the Water Quality Initiative and other watershed-based programs, the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship is already supporting 15 different watershed projects within the targeted areas here. And those already have $3.3 million of state money with an additional $4 million worth of matching money, local and other matching money in those project areas. This will just leverage that even further. So this again reinforces the commitment of Iowans to embrace a voluntary approach to improving water quality and increasing resiliency during flood events. So we look forward to partnering with all the folks that are a part of this project, the cities, the counties, the soil and water conservation districts, RC&Ds, the watershed management authorities, our organizations that are out there as well, USDA service centers that are out there, federal partners are all going to be important in the implementation of this grant. And certainly most importantly, we look forward to working with the Iowans on the ground that are going to be our partners in investing and allowing us to put these practices on the ground, and certainly going to be the beneficiaries as well of some resources that have helped get done and some more things that need to get done. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to introduce HUD Regional Administrator Jennifer Tidwell to come to the podium as well. Help me recognize
Thank you, Secretary Northey. Good afternoon. On behalf of Secretary Castro, it is my pleasure to be here today with Governor Branstad and other distinguished federal, local, and state officials to recognize the state of Iowa as the recipient of the National Disaster Resiliency Competition. The funding will support the Iowa Watershed Approach, a holistic watershed program designed to sustain its valuable agricultural economy and protect the vulnerable residents and communities. The National Disaster Resiliency Competition focused on all levels of government, working together with the private sector and foundations to tackle challenges faced by communities and families who have experienced natural disasters. This competition, with the assistance of the Rockefeller Foundation, has helped communities build stronger and um, uh, smarter partnerships. It has encouraged communities that have experienced these natural disasters to create their own systems to manage flooding. It is evident that the state of Iowa's partnerships have worked extensively through this competitive process to strengthen their plan to reduce flood risk and improve water quality. Congratulations, and HUD looks forward to working with the state of Iowa on its efforts. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Buell from
Thank you, Assistant Administrator, for that introduction. On behalf of the City of Dubuque, let me begin by saying we are extremely grateful to HUD for its national leadership in the area of resiliency. We're honored to be recipients of this significant grant award and proud to partner with the state of Iowa in protecting our residents and our land from flood disasters through the Iowa Watershed Approach for urban and rural resilience. Dubuque is creating an urban approach to build resiliency into our neighborhoods. Just as the state of Iowa is working with the Iowa Flood Center and partners across the state to work upstream to approach to prevent flood disaster downstream. Dubuque is taking a watershed approach to providing flood protection and through our B Branch Creek Watershed Flood Mitigation Project. We are grateful for this funding from HUD and will build upon the significant support this project has already received from the state through the Iowa Flood Mitigation Board. More specifically, these grant funds will enable us to assist watershed residents in recovering from and mitigating the lasting damage and impact of flooding through efforts to mitigate mold, rebuild foundations, replace damaged appliances, and make additional stormwater infrastructure improvements. We will build a more resilient Dubuque and gladly share our urban model with communities in Iowa and across the country, just as the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management will with their innovative rural model. Thank you, Governor Branstad, for your continued support of our efforts. I distinctly remember, as you mentioned, your visit to Dubuque that morning in July of 2011, just hours after the historic storm that devastated so much of our community. We hope to never experience that again, but if we do, we will be better prepared. I also want to thank the entire state of Iowa team with whom we have collaborated for the past 2 years as we prepare to submit this award-winning proposal. We look forward to working with you in the future to implement these exciting plans. And now I would like to introduce our final speaker. The Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance is dedicated to helping farmers implement conservation practices to improve water quality and increase the scale and pace of the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. Please welcome Sean McMahon, Director of the Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance.
Thank you, Mayor Buell. Well, this is truly a great day for Iowa. This grant solidifies that we are one Iowa, one water, and that we have one future together. It reinforces the urban-rural partnerships that the Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance has been helping to foster. Increasingly, multiple cities across Iowa are recognizing that it makes sense to partner with farmers in a collaborative way to improve water quality, including right here in the city of Des Moines with the Wastewater Reclamation Authority, and also the cities of Dubuque, Storm Lake, and Cedar Rapids. This grant will help to more effectively implement the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy and the Water Quality Initiative. It will also help us to demonstrate, expand, and replicate the watershed approach to improving water quality in Iowa. That approach includes watershed planning with broad stakeholder engagement, water quality monitoring at multiple scales, and targeting for maximum effectiveness. Agriculture is a large part of our communities, and we are serious about continuing to take action to improve water quality and reduce flood risk. This grant will help us to keep water on the land longer while maintaining or improving agricultural productivity and farmers' profitability. That will benefit cities. We are very pleased to be a part of this collaborative effort, and we'd like to recognize all the leaders behind me and all of the partners in this grant, but especially we'd like to recognize the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management and the Flood Center at the University of Iowa for their leadership, their vision, and their partnership. And I'd further like to recognize their recognition that agriculture and urban communities must work together to craft the most effective solution. This grant will help us all to manage more effectively for seasonal climatic variability. It will result in more resilient farms, more resilient cities, more resilient ecosystems, and a more resilient Iowa. Thank you.
I want to thank each of the presenters, and we'd open it to your questions at this point for any of the presenters. We have this on the sheet. I think there's a handout here. I can go through the figures. The Dubuque Healthy Homes gets $8,427,665. Well, okay, they really go hand in hand. So when we reduce floods, we improve water quality. So they really go hand in hand. And so, some of these projects, as I think all of the presenters, I think articulately pointed out, we're in this together. And the cities oftentimes are downstream from the farms, and they're affected. This particular one in Dubuque, and I've been there and visited there several times. I was there, as the mayor mentioned, when the flash flood hit back in July of 2011. I was there recently. They've already done some work with the state money that they've received, and this will make it possible for them to do a lot more. And Dubuque has also a infrastructure project as well as Dubuque Homes, but I think there's a handout that's got the exact amount that's going to each of the projects, including $31,959,000 going to the watershed projects. Other questions? It's a public problem. It's a problem we all have. We want to reduce flooding. I go way back with this, the flood of '93, and we lived through that here in Des Moines. Des Moines was the largest city at that time that had lost its waterworks because of flooding. And a lot of work has been done to mitigate that, prevent flooding, and so all you have to do is drive past the waterworks and you see the big berm around that so it won't get flooded out even. And we had flooding on Florida Drive in December this year. So when we address the issues of flooding and flood prevention, we also dramatically reduce nutrient loss and improve water quality. So they really do go hand in hand. The nice thing about this is it's really a great partnership. The federal government, obviously, we appreciate HUD's resiliency grants, augmenting what the state is already doing. We recognize we need to do a lot more, and we need to have a long-term funding source for that. That's where we came up with the idea of the Water Quality Fund. So we know there's a lot more to do. We're proud of what has already been done, and we want to build on that. And we think this kind of a collaborative process that involves the federal government, Secretary Vilsack obviously has been very supportive of this, and there's USDA funds coming to help as well. The nutrient reduction strategy, which both Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship and the DNR involved in. The whole nutrient reduction strategy was really developed by Iowa State University. And of course, we have the Flood Center at the University of Iowa that's been very involved in helping direct this. And then our Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management, which deals with the aftermath when we do have these floods. And I get to sit at the end of the table here and get the reports on all the different work that's going on when we do have floods and other disasters.
Sure. Well, this project, the B Branch Flood Mitigation Project, is about a $200 million project in the city. We're actually daylighting a creek that was buried over 100 years ago. That storm sewer had about 1/5 of the capacity of the rain events that we've seen over the past 10 to 12 years in the city of Dubuque. So we're actually daylighting that creek. We're creating the capacity for that 500-year storm. And we're going to do mitigation of a lot of those homes that have failing foundations, mold, appliances that were destroyed repeatedly. We're going to, this money that we're going to be receiving in this grant is going to help us move some components of that project, some sewer expansion, diameter expansions to create the capacity to carry the water from a lot of these streets that the water would drain to before we go into these neighborhoods. And it's going to help pay for half of the piping that we have to put under the railroad tracks to get the water out of the B Branch project waterway. I think those are the three major components of where this money is going to go. Those projects would have had to wait up to 20 years maybe before we could find the funding to actually implement them. So this is going to be a big help in getting this project to the place where it will handle those 500-year storms in a much shorter period of time.
I would also point out, in addition to the mayor, Mike Van Milligan, who's a longtime city manager, is here, and Terry Goodman, who's also been I think you're the deputy city manager now? Assistant city manager. But also I worked with Terry way back with the Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium project, which is a tremendous tourism attraction. If you've not been to see that in Dubuque, you need to see it. And this project isn't too far from there either.
And I also wanted to introduce City Council Member Joyce Connor to board this project.
Well, Joyce, thank you for coming too. Thank you. Anybody else from Dubuque that we haven't?
Or any of the other communities that we need to acknowledge.
Okay, other questions?
So this competition was a very rigorous competition with a lot of communities applying. And I think the collaborative nature and the partnerships that were enveloped in this competition with the Iowa folks is one of the things that set this application apart. We are glad to be able to stand here today, and I know Secretary Castro was very happy to see that Iowa was selected.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, first of all, I think it's a pretty bold and unique idea that we've come up with. One of our challenges, we're very proud of the nutrient reduction strategy, and we've already made significant progress on it. And is $9.5 million already in the present budget for that, and we've been working on it for like 3 years. And projects like this give us federal help as well. But we think there's a need for a long-term, reliable source of funding. It's been estimated the cost will be $4 to $5 billion over a long period of time. And our proposal would provide that funding while at the same time providing a growing source of funding for school infrastructure out of sales tax rather than property tax. So we think that's a good thing both for school infrastructure and for water quality. And we announced this with Secretary Vilsack, and we're committed to working in a collaborative way with federal agencies as well as with the local people like this project. But we also are open to other suggestions or ideas on how this could be improved. The big thing is we think it's an immediate problem that needs to be addressed. We don't want it put off, and that's why we put together this bold proposal. And we want to work through the legislative process, and the Lieutenant Governor and I and Secretary Northey are meeting with all kinds of groups, urban mayors and city managers and people involved with water treatment in the cities because it affects them, and they have one of the challenges with point source pollution. Also working with agricultural groups and with the business groups because they're concerned. What we really want is a collaborative, supportive environment. We're all working together instead of fighting each other. Yeah, we just had a meeting yesterday with legislators, and we have time set aside every week, almost every day, to meet with legislators to share with them this. And we're also meeting with school superintendents and agriculture and business groups. Well, I want to take questions on this subject first.
There's pieces of that to come together yet. There'll be a lot of discussion bringing folks in to partner, but it's going to be similar to some of the work that's being done out there now. So it'll be cost share programs where there are investments by landowners. It's going to be targeted again where it can do the most good, and ideally as well where it can do the most good both for water quality and for flood protection. And so it's a great pool of dollars that will be able to be spent over the next several years. So it's not going to be done at one time. Larry, you want to speak about it as well? But
Larry's from the Flood Center at University of Iowa. You can maybe.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful opportunity. We have a current project that's target the practices. We do an initial hydrologic assessment to find out which acres in those watersheds produce the greatest runoff, which ones have the greatest potential for holding water back. So we do these initial hydrologic assessments, and then we work very closely with the watershed management authorities, so that it's the local folks that are deciding, where those practices go. So everything is voluntary. There's no kind of forcing any practice upon anybody, but it is a very synergistic approach that we have. The projects get built. We do monitoring beforehand. We do monitoring after, both for stream flow reduction and water quality improvement. And we develop these mathematical models that allow us, to be able to predict those things. So
This is really, I think, one of the few end-to-end projects of its kind in the nation. And as we presented this to various HUD critique panels throughout the application process, we got very favorable feedback that this is unique to the country, and they were really impressed that Iowa stepped up in this way. Yeah, and so the monitoring, of course, is something that many people are interested in Iowa, and it is complex. We do some monitoring that is grab sample, where we have individuals go out and collect samples. Oftentimes that can be at the farm scale or field scale, and we work with ag partners on that. The Iowa Soybean Association and many other groups are really good at doing that type of work. We also do monitoring that is automated, real-time continuous monitoring of stream flow, where we have about 250 water level sensors in the state of Iowa. That's unheard of in the rest of the nation. We operate a water quality monitoring network in Iowa. Next year, we'll have more than 40. The U.S. Geological Survey will have an additional 15, so we'll have about 55 in Iowa. That's the largest water quality monitoring network in the state. We're really making some very quick strides forward on this work, and really delighted that HUD recognized that in our application, and we're able to find funding for the state.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.